I've been around doing this for well over 100 major Payday updates across the history of the franchise, including the previous 9 we've seen for Payday 3, and in that time, I've never been quite as conflicted as I am today. Update 10 and DLC 4, Fear and Greed, sends us off from the first year of content with a bang. It's an absolutely incredible concept for a heist. The weapons releasing alongside it, including the Minigun overkill weapon, are top draw, and I even think they pretty much nailed it with the cosmetics. But yet again, when you look at the overall update, it's impossible to not be slightly disappointed in the execution and polish. Not for the first time, it appears as though this content has been thoroughly rushed out the door with a myriad of bugs and baffling design decisions which hold it back from being an all-timer. It's indicative, to me at least, of the fact that crippling contractual deadlines and mismanagement of key resources has been the story of Payday this year. There are some wonderful designs and concepts that I can't wait to talk you through in this video, but at the same time, there are simply inexplicable choices that hamstring it and show just how haphazard Starbreeze has become with its approach to new content. I've come out of the last week after testing this update eminently satisfied by the 3-course update meal Starbreeze has cooked up, with real highlights being the free-to-all Houston and Minigun overkill weapon, but there's still a sour taste that lingers slightly too long on the palate. One day, I just want to be able to tell you I like something in this game without also having to preface that statement with several warnings of game-breaking issues. But hey, at least the cosmetics are pretty nice, and after joining me or any other Twitch affiliate streaming Payday 3 later today over on Twitch, you'll be able to sport this sweet American Psycho-inspired mask, perfect for that yuppie life on Wall Street as you tackle fear and greed. On the topic of masks, the sponsor of today's video is even more impressive and might be the more tangible option you're craving, especially if you find sleep hard to come by. Manta Sleep is the premier brand in sleep and relaxation eyewear. Their masks are easy to slip on and comfortable to wear, being able to shut out the light wherever you are, be that in bed or on a flight, and at whatever time of day you need it, especially if you're looking to start napping to optimize those late night Payday sessions. They stock an impressive range of masks, from the tried and true classic for a better night's sleep, headphone fitted for those who like to fall asleep to the story of Payday, to even therapeutic options. I've been personally using their premium Feel Steam mask to soothe my painfully dry eyes, which has made a tangible difference to my day-to-day routine, and I know my partner is a massive fan of the relaxing Cool Eye cups. If Manta Sleep's impressive offering has piqued your interest, check out their website from the link down in the description or pinned comment. Okay, you know the drill by now. Heist review up front whenever we get a new update, and Fear and Greed is certainly a heist worthy of serious discussion. I adore the setting and concept. We're hitting Wall Street with everything we have, manipulating the market by hacking into its internal systems, shorting the stocks financing Concord and his PMC treaty, and using Joy's advanced AI to counter-trade that manipulation before shutting down Wall Street altogether and fleeing the scene. It's obviously a ludicrous plan, but I love it. It's a true progression of the sorts of heists the gang pulled off in Payday 2, matching the scale and ambition I hope Payday 3 would be all about. In both loud and stealth, we start on the roof, unless we have access to a particularly powerful favour, which I'll discuss later on. This rooftop section is relatively straightforward, but I for one love that it grounds the heist in reality, instead of dropping us into some random location in media res. It contextualizes the entry and escape plan, allows designers to play with different environments and objectives, and serves a real purpose. It can get a little tedious with repeat plays, but I'd still rather have an opening section like this one, which particularly encourages you to at least attempt a little hybrid stealth, as otherwise you'll be entering the stock exchange in absolute chaos, with most of your potential hostages already out of the building. I'll run through loud first, but do keep in mind many of the objectives are shared between approaches, which I think is a consistent weakness of Payday 3's heist design, as some objectives just aren't suited for the pacing of a certain approach. To enter the core of the heist, you need to locate a zipline bag, an elevator power switch, and its corresponding elevator, which can be done simply by tracing the path of one of these coloured pipes for a silent entrance through one of 3 potential lift shafts. From there, you'll need to locate a specified office to hack access to one of its PCs, searching through these red marked documents to finally complete the process, and cracking the corresponding safe to locate a USB drive. This can then be inserted into the mainframe of one of the numbered trading terminals and brought back to the transfer control room, at which point you'll start moving large sums of money, deactivating 3 specific circuit breakers to keep the exchange going. Whilst it can be exciting seeing the value fly all the way up to a maximum of $10 million on overkill difficulty, unfortunately that's not going to be your cash takeaway at the end of the heist. Once that's complete, you can hold out to max the exchange and increase your infamy and cash payouts, or just shut the market down immediately using an EMP stashed on the heist. From there, you'll enter the escape portion, zip-lining back to the roof and setting up a transmitter and satellite dish to twist a crane around and create a bridge over the roof of the exchange with one of the 99 boxes for Bile to complete the pickup and escape. This sounds simple, but is actually a brutal final charge out in the open, with spawns coming from what feels like all angles that will probably claim the most scalps when taking on what is already one of Payday 3's most challenging heists. Oh, and watch your footing on the bridge. Payday 3 has none of the invisible walls Payday 2 used to have to prevent you plummeting 100 feet to your death. I don't really need to run you through all the stealth objectives in detail because they are broadly identical. It has the exact same rooftop section, finding the correct office where you can use an RFID tag or QR code to access it quietly, or just honestly smash your way through the glass and control the civs, as the guard patrols seem to be very fixed on this heist and they won't necessarily track into all of the offices. The only difference here is your trespass might be picked up by a silent alarm, which you'll need to switch off before proceeding. Once again, you'll be doing the same objective around the USB and turning off the specific circuit breakers via their respective codes, and then EMPing the trade floor, which can be a nightmare to pull off when masked up, before fleeing back to the roof in the wake of a point of no return timer, as every guard on the map will be on high alert after the trading floor turns a murky brown. This time, Bao will be right outside to pick you up with no heat on his tail. Okay, that's the walkthrough, but I have so much more I want to say about this heist that just walking through its objectives doesn't really do it justice. First of all, the reward is reasonable, 1.2 million overkill with some bonus loot to find and around 1,500 infamy despite not offering an all loot bonus. Sadly, this isn't a reward proportionate to the effort required to complete it in Loud, as this is comfortably the most intense heist in the game, both in terms of spawn logic and objective structure. You will get absolutely surrounded on this heist from minute 1 to the escape on the rooftops, and despite being a paradise of cover, the way the spawns now function, you'll still get swamped if you don't have a high kill per minute build. In fact, I'd say this heist is second to none in terms of solo difficulty in particular. I had to switch from an incredibly meta Adderlig setup to even have a chance on overkill solo, and even with that one-shot kill machine equipped, it was a constant challenge to keep my crewmates alive and not get overrun. The sniper spawns are devious, you'll be constantly pressured by cloakers and techies, and can end up simply backed into a corner for long assault waves. On one hand, I did have a lot of fun trying to solve this solo problem, really focusing up to get it done, but on the other, it's probably just a little too hot to handle for solo overkill players. I don't think it would be unpopular to call for at least marginally scaling spawn caps to be implemented as we're used to in Payday 2. The problem is though, this heist isn't just difficult for the right reasons, or at least reasons I understand. At times, it's hard because it's a broken visual mess. The colour grading around the main lobby is utterly atrocious. Before the final circuit breaker goes down, everything will be tinted this murky teal colour, which is as off-putting and unnecessary as it looks. The transition between regular lighting and this blue is absolutely jarring, and it takes what could be a really striking heist and transforms it into a complete train wreck. It doesn't get much better when they decide to go from blue to red, or then a very off-putting brown in the lead up to the escape. It's still just a horrible blanket effect with no clear purpose that also causes issues throughout the heist, as it'll be flashed on your screen at random intervals when you take damage, and seems to contribute to some seriously buggy visual glitches related to lighting and smoke effects. It's just awful, and from my perspective, shipping in this state is an utter embarrassment. I'd be furious if the assets I designed or gameplay I crafted was impaired by this nonsensical lighting. It's impossible to fathom how this has happened, and it needs to be hotfixed in my opinion. If the peculiar visuals don't get to you though, it'll be the barely functional AI. You see, cops are great at hunting you down mid-assault, but when it comes to the end of one and they're meant to pull back, there's a very good chance they'll just stay put as their pathing breaks completely, meaning you'll just be as hemmed in as you were during the assault for the 30 odd seconds you're meant to get to regroup. This is the most common issue I've ran into, but I've also seen bulldozers forget they have weapons they can shoot, and civs just stand there after being freed as there's a literal favour that traps everyone inside the exchange building, leading to these strange, uncanny moments where the civilians, frightened for their lives, just stand around and take stock, glowing blue like everything else on this heist. And that's not even mentioning that if you don't give your crew AI an earful on the rooftop, shouting to wake them up, there's a very good chance you'll just be left alone on this heist, making those ridiculous spawns even more difficult to handle, and resulting in these phantom revive situations where you'll end up getting bullied mercilessly into custody by just a single cloaker. I thought the issues with Houston Breakout couldn't be topped, but whilst I've not run into any problems with soft locks yet, the overall presentation is just so off-putting. I can't in good conscience recommend you buy this DLC until these glaring amateurish issues are fixed. That said, these are very addressable problems, so I'm not writing off this update just yet, simply saying that should be the priority of everyone at the studio if they want people to feel comfortable spending more money on their content. This heist also does a lot right and has some really interesting ideas that could be tremendously fun if they were properly designed. For example, this is a zero-bag heist. Instead, the loot is entirely digital, almost like a modern undercover from Payday the Heist. This not only means you can happily drop transporter, it also means that the core loop of objectives are a little more compelling and less run-of-the-mill than what we've come to expect. I also do like the 3-act structure of the heist, and think it handles a hybrid stealth approach incredibly well. The escape is also absolutely bonkers, with an endless assault and open defensive objectives, requiring some incredibly sharp or tactically thought out gameplay to prevail. And again, I genuinely like the added difficulty this heist offers, I just wish it wasn't mostly the result of sheer cop numbers smothering you. Regardless, this heist has some truly excellent set pieces when you stop paying attention to the strange lighting and colour grading issues and just start to enjoy the setting and enlarged scope of what you're dealing with. Stealth, despite being slightly too similar to Loud in terms of its objective requirements, is well crafted on this heist too, with a mask-on approach demanded of the player without a specific favour. This stipulation makes it comfortably the most challenging in the game, although it's also a fair challenge with just as many tools presented to the player as there are obstacles to make it more manageable. Traversal is well thought out with branching paths and ways to limit your time out on the exposed trading floor. Lures finally feel relevant, and it's clear that practicing your movement in stealth will really help out on this heist in particular. Some will probably find it frustratingly difficult, but as a quick tip from me, once you've located the guard with the blue keycard, things get a lot easier with cams going down. Civilian control is also something to consider here. You'll be able to tie them out of harm's way once you start to learn guard pathing, meaning if you're smart about it, you can silently reduce the active civ population to open up more space on the map. What I will say is, I'm not sure about how some of the hack objectives have been balanced, as it felt like I need to be pixel perfect in my positioning at times to get anything done. And I also think the point of no return timed escape will be a source of massive frustration for stealth purists. To be clear, making potentially the hardest stealth experience in the game, and then placing a set fail point right at the end, which could lead to 30 minutes of time wasted, was a bold move. Oh, and adding objectives like wait for all the cash to transfer is all well and good in Loud, but in Stealth you're basically asking the player to go AFK for a bit, which isn't exactly tantalising gameplay design. Now, as I've already mentioned, there is an incredibly powerful favour which gives you jarringly instant access to the trading floor whilst unmasked, allowing you to sneak around the heist in casing mode. This obviously skips the heist opening, but also pretty much trivialises everything else about it. This one goes from the hardest stealth heist in the game to comfortably the easiest, as there's essentially no risk to it mask off. This is obviously why they hid this option behind a favour, because they couldn't find a way to balance it otherwise, but I don't think this sits right by me, especially when the current favour system is as half-baked as it is, with no way to dictate the favour you'll unlock. It's a fun concept, but the relative difficulty is night and day, and so I think casing mode just can't work with this heist as it's currently balanced. Also, the game never tells you this, but you do need to mask up to activate the EMP at the end, meaning the escape is the same mask on or off, which isn't well conveyed at all. Obviously, the other favours don't stack up with the casing mode one, which is even useful for Loud as it allows you to corral the civs immediately without risking the rooftop entrance, but they are at least more interesting than what we've come to expect, allowing you to shut down certain spawn points and locate the red keycard with ease. Overall, I'd say this is an ambitious but incredibly flawed heist. It tries a lot of new things that work for me, but just as many that fall flat. I think the current state it's in is simply impossible to excuse. Like I said, I'm holding off on a recommendation until I see those glaring issues I mentioned addressed. As for the narrative and lore around this one, it's a massive damp squib in my eyes. My disappointment in the story of Payday 3 has hit a new low. The setup to the heist itself is cool, and I like the build up and planning, but the actual result of it is crushingly disappointing. To remind you, John Concord is meant to be the guy who masterminded the Payday gang assassination plot as revenge for them felling Murky Water years earlier. How do we deal with this devious villain who's effectively the only reason Payday 3 exists? We blow up his stocks and go, I hope that bloody dickhead tops himself, lads. It's honestly just the most nothing conclusion to the first year of the game's story I can imagine, and I'm willing to bet that is it for Concord. He's just gone, the same way we never heard anything again from the villains of the post-White House DLC campaigns from Payday 2. I've said it before, but they've based far too much of the Payday 3 model on the modern Payday 2 approach, which shows a fundamental lack of understanding of why that worked for a 10-year-old game, but won't work to drive a new sequel. Oh, and by the way, if the windows of the stock exchange were open, as they are in this cutscene, the heist might not appear diabolically blue at all times. Just a minor suggestion. I've said my piece though, let's move on to the aspects of this update that are irrefutably excellent, the DLC weapons, starting with the TAS-12, better known as the Spaz. This pump-action shotgun sits in a weak category with only the Rheinfelder company, which is currently competing for the position of the worst weapon in the game. I'm happy to report the Spaz feels much more impactful and might actually find some usage. Its low fire rate makes it feel a little clunky, but that does seem to come in trade for a solid one-shot kill range and spread. In fact, it can even one-shot heavy swats to the body, which is key. However, I still don't find it to be in the same ballpark as the other non-pump action shotguns in the game. It's honestly just the nature of these slower pump actions, they're just not well suited to how the game wants you to play up against larger assault waves. It does have plenty of style and sounds and feels powerful, but its overall output leaves a little bit to be desired. Like the Rheinfeld though, this thing is exceptional at proccing edge and grip with combat reload, which is a nice added utility. Unfortunately, the unwieldiness of the weapon category it finds itself in leaves me a little unsure as to its viability, as I've run into several situations where I've been frame trapped by the pump action itself, slowing me down in combat. Next up we have the Jackknife SE5, based on the Browning High Power. I was blindsided by this one as I felt that launching with two pistol secondaries wasn't in keeping with the formula we've seen from previous weapon packs. But in all honesty, I take it all back. The Browning is a fantastic addition to the pistol category, putting most of the base roster to shame. It's comfortably the most consistent feeling standard semi-auto pistol, with above average stats across the board, combined with an easy and consistent 2-shot kill to the head. It's the quintessential switching weapons is faster than reloading sidearm. That feels satisfying to shoot, and more than good enough to keep pumping out damage throughout combat. It has massively exceeded my expectations, landing close to being good enough to function as a surrogate primary, with its consistency being furthered by a rapid reload speed. It's so much more than I first expected when I saw the reveal, a genuine staple of the secondary class without doing anything truly standout. It's just damn efficient, easy to control and satisfying to shoot. The remaining semi-auto pistols just feel bland and samey in comparison. I'll admit it does start to feel a little stretched when heavy swats start rolling in and it becomes a 3 headshot kill, but that's the fate of most pistols in this game, and I think it still holds its own within the category, even as the difficulty starts to ramp up. However, I said most pistols for a good reason. That's because the final addition in this DLC pack, the Gostini Viper, or Desert Eagle, is a beast. This thing is an incredibly strong addition to the semi-auto secondary pistol category, to the point that it barely functions like the other weapons in its class. Not only can it comfortably land a one-shot headshot on heavy swats, it also joins an exclusive category of being able to one-shot shields through their faceplates, making it not only an incredibly powerful switch-in, but also a standalone carry of a weapon, capable of similar feats to the semi-auto SA. It's worth mentioning this thing can even land one-shots to the body in certain situations, making it an even easier to use equivalent. Whilst it's not quite as strong as the bull kick, which still holds its crown for being capable of one-shotting just about anything to the body in the right conditions, the deagle is much easier to handle, with lower recoil stats, a faster fire rate and a mag reload, making it less dependent on sheer stopping power to find a use within your build. In fact, it's really competing with the weapons in the primary category in terms of its power and viability, feeling like a pocket SA you can slap into any build without a second thought. It's top tier, but not an outright meta breaker in my opinion, just because it fits a slightly different niche to something like the bull kick, and in the primary category the Adderlig still exists to one-shot everything else. I will say it's probably marginally stronger than the Browning, but not quite as satisfying to wield in my opinion, which was a massive shock to me too. Once again, all three have excellent inspect and reload animations, which just adds another dimension of quality to this pack, alongside a whale charm and swag bag sticker. Whilst I've found it tricky at times to recommend paid Heist for this game, the weapon DLCs have pretty much never failed to catch my eye, and this one is more of the same. The two secondaries are absolute standouts with top tier viability and unique gameplay niches. The Spaz is a much needed upgrade to the free Rheinfeld, and whilst it still doesn't do it for me, it'll likely remain a favourite for many players. But one weapon I can guarantee will experience copious usage volume in the coming weeks is the M135 Argus, a new weapon in the overkill slot, which finally does enough to encourage me to call Bile in again. This thing packs 750 rounds of pure destruction, ripping through everything that stands in your path, including shields, who I expected to be a de facto counter, but will actually just get blown away by your hailstorm of bullets. As it ramps, it gets more accurate, encouraging you to hold down the trigger and not let go until you're just facing down a fine red mist. It even has more than a solid matchup against dozers, taking just a couple of seconds to rip through their armor even if you aim for the body. It doesn't compete with the Red Fox for dozer deletion, but it's still a commendable second place. The one balancing downside it has is that it will encumber you, meaning you can't run with it or perform most interactions, so you will have to drop it occasionally. Despite that drawback, it's a monster of a weapon, and I've also got to commend the team for just how satisfying they've made it to wield. No cumbersome reload, just spin up and flatten cops. It's a dream, and honestly my favourite addition in this entire update. It's fun, it's silly, it's highly viable, and I think Payday needs more of this. Like the regular weapons it's shipping with, it even has its own unique inspect animation. Oh, and remember, you can chain miniguns together, which might be a bit OP, but with cops spawning in the numbers they now seem to be, we might just need access to these to cope with coming updates. The other major free addition in this update is of course Houston, and for my part I think they've really nailed it. Derek Reyes had a lot of fun with his voice lines and is actually one of the most convincing characters in the gang, with a really distinct personality when on a heist. A consummate professional with a few funny lines, Houston fans will be more than content with his presentation and personality. I'm also pleased to report that the Houston-Hoxton beef is far from settled, as they're anything but cordial out in the field. His preset weapon is the Freedom's Fortune, a reskin for the Model 11 which fits his old role as the crew's ghost nicely, but I really struggle to use it after experiencing the possibilities opened up by the two new DLC pistols I've already waxed lyrical about. Houston also comes with the Public Menace mask, available for just 50 C-stacks, resembling the Hannibal mask from his initial appearance on Houston Breakout, as well as the Maniac charm, calling back to his old safe house job. Houston is entirely free for all players, but you will have to redeem him as a separate free DLC on the store, which seems a bit odd when Clover worked as she did. This feels like a bit of conditioning to me. Anyway, the final element of this update that is paid is the Tailor Pack, which as ever consists of 4 masks, 4 outfits and 4 pairs of gloves. I believe they've done well with the Wall Street theming, and these are all fairly high quality masks, although I've never been a massive fan of animal masks. The outfits do stand out from the game's base offering though. The blue floor trader suit is heavily Payday gang themed, the pinstripe Mad Dog was pretty much tailor made for Wolf, all taped up with a fetching pattern tie. Reckoning breaks them all by being a bit of a Wall Street counterculture suit to rise up against the suit and tie wearing yuppies, and finally Power Play is bloody hilarious. It's a figure hugging shirt, vest and trouser combo that doesn't half show off those glutes. We don't have enough civilian attire like this one, so I think I'll be sporting this almost as often as the Hawaiian shirt. I'm also happy with some new distinctly coloured gloves, as well as the return of these punk rock studded options. And whilst clipping remains a nightmare on a number of these outfits, that just seems to be par for the course at this point sadly. If you don't fancy paying for your new cosmetics, you also have the chance to grab one of 3 new slightly plainer mask options. The Profit has a funny name and a few C-stacks in its eyes, the stock ticker trades its eyes for a screen, whilst the Market Maven is the most classic of the three masks with more of a Payday 2 vibe. My take is that overall these three masks are brilliant, so I'm less interested in the tailor pack than I would be otherwise. Cosmetics seem to have been at the forefront of this update in general actually, as we're also getting the start of a new Mask of the Week rotation, which you can see on screen now, whilst the previous set will be entering the store at a permanently increased C-stack price. And of course, don't forget about the Twitch drops for this month. As for miscellaneous changes, once again this requires us to scour the game to work out what's been added, as patch notes aren't compiled until launch. I've noticed two major additions, the first being a new pair of fully animated wheel callouts to wait and follow, which aren't exactly solving the console communication issue, but are a fine addition, and the second being a simple and obvious feature that always should have existed, but I'm still relieved to see functioning, being a true pause feature when playing solo. This is a godsend and is such an industry standard, it's mad that I'm hyping it up, but here we are, September 2024, what a year. Finally, an update on the status of the Boys in Blue oil room. There's not been any further spread, but it's still broken, a genuine mystery modern science may never understand. So overall, update 10 brings us full circle. What should have been a triumph has ended up flawed and unfinished. I talked about Payday 3 being a rough gem at launch, and I'm not sure we've ever got past that rough stage. The game is undoubtedly taking positive steps, and there's plenty to now look forward to with Armor 2.0 slated for later this year, but it's still releasing content that feels unfinished. I can't help but feel as if resources are being misallocated and corners are being cut, because there's still so much potential there, but the execution remains flawed. Fear and Greed is less, I'm not leaving, more so drooling high off its brains on Quaaludes. They're gonna have a hard time selling pens, let alone DLCs, if they don't start polishing these experiences from day one. Thank you all so much for watching. The update's still worth checking out for the weapons and Houston, so I'll see you all later for the stream. Take care, I'll see you then. A huge thank you to my dedicated Patreon backers. If you want to join this crew in going infamous, check out the link below and pledge as little as $2 to see your name in the credits, or get 24-hour early access to future videos and vote on upcoming content. Take care, I'll see you all soon.